The commentary on Psalm 85, verse 3, continues with part 2. You withdrew all your fury. You turned from your burning anger. As we continue examining part 2 of verse 3, which describes Israel as the 7 years of tribulation come to a close, even during these trying times, God has not abandoned his special possession. For just at that time the Lord will appear in person. We read in Zechariah 14:1 through 21. Watch, for the day of the Lord is coming when all your possessions will be plundered right in front of you. I will gather all the nations to fight against Jerusalem. The city will be taken, the houses looted, the women raped. Half of the population will be taken into captivity, and the rest will be left among the ruins of the city. Then the Lord will go out and fight against those nations as he has fought in times past. On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will split apart, making a wide valley running from east to west. Half of the mountain will move toward the north and half toward the south. You will flee through this valley, for it will reach all the way across to Azel. Yes, you will flee as you did from the earthquakes in the days of King Uzziah of Judah. Then the Lord my God will come, and all his holy ones with him. On that day the sources of light will no longer shine, yet there will be continuous day. Only the Lord knows how this could happen. There will be no normal day or night, and at evening time it will still be light. On that day life-giving water will flow out of Jerusalem, half toward the Dead Sea and half toward the Mediterranean, flowing continuously both in summer and winter. And the Lord will be king over all the earth. On that day there will be one Lord. His name alone will be worshipped. All of the land from Geba, north of Judah to Rimmon, south to Jerusalem, will become one vast plain, but Jerusalem will be raised up in its original place, and it will be inhabited all the way from the Benjamin gate over to the site of the old gate, then to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hanel to the king's winepress. And Jerusalem will be filled, safe at last, never again to be cursed or destroyed. And the Lord will send a plague on the nations that fought against Jerusalem. Their people will become like walking corpses, their flesh rotting away. Their eyes will rot in their socket, and their tongues will rot in their mouth. On that day they will be terrified, stricken by the Lord with great panic. They will fight their neighbors hand to hand. Judah, too, will be fighting at Jerusalem. The wealth of all of the neighboring nations will be captured, great quantities of gold and silver and fine clothing. This same plague will strike horses, mules, camels, donkeys, and all of the other animals in the enemy's camps. In the end, the enemies of Jerusalem will who survive the plague will go up to Jerusalem each year to worship the King, the Lord's God, the Lord of heaven's army, and celebrate the festival of shelters. Any nation in the world that refuses to come to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of heaven's army, will have no rain. If the people of Egypt refuse to attend the festival, the Lord will punish them with the same plague that he sends to other nations who refuse to go. Egypt and the other nations will all be punished if they don't go to celebrate the festival of shelters. On that day, even the harness bells of the Lord's horses will be inscribed with these words, "Holy to the Lord," and the cooking pots in the temple of the Lord will be as sacred as the basins used beside the altar. In fact, every cooking pot in Jerusalem and Judah will be holy to the Lord of heaven's armies. All who come to worship will be free to use any of these pots to boil their sacrifices, and on that day there will no longer be traitors in the temple of the Lord of heaven's armies. Two things restrict this passage from referring to anything beyond the great white throne judgment. After that judgment, the angel of death will be cast into the lake of fire, so that there will no longer be sacrifices. And the second point is the reference to the nations. For in the new heaven and on the new earth, there will be neither Jew or Gentile. We will be one people. On earth, at the beginning of the millennial reign of Christ on this earth, The Jewish nation will have accepted Jesus of Nazareth as their own, the pierced one of Calvary, their promised Messiah. We read in Zechariah 12:8 through 12, on that day the Lord will defend the people of Jerusalem. The weakest among them will be as mighty as King David, and royal descendants will be like God, like the angel of the Lord who goes before them. For on that day I will begin to destroy all of the nations that come against Jerusalem. Then I will pour out a spirit of grace and prayer on the family of David and on the people of Jerusalem. They will look on me whom they have pierced and mourn for him as an only son. They will grieve bitterly for him as the firstborn son who has died. Their sorrow and mourning in Jerusalem will be on that day will be like the great mourning at Hadad Rimmon and the valley of Megiddo. All Israel will mourn.